bracket, and they're going to face off for the Gauntlet.
Yes, so the Gauntlet will be a $1,000 prize pool, and you guys got actually a really cool prize as well. So if you're watching and you say, I want a chance to do that, go ahead and join channel NASL and talk to one of the admins, see if you can get in line for the Gauntlet. But until then, we'll focus on this game and introduce our players. Starting in top right, we have a recent pickup to Team Fnatic. It is Harstem, the Dutch Protoss, who's been turning heads with his performances at IEM, as well as even just showing up on online cups. Harstem is a really cool player, and actually I had the pleasure of watching him practice with some of the players from EG like Suppy. And Harstem has been practicing a lot, like 8-9 hours a day over in the Netherlands. And it's actually really funny too, because Harstem's like complaining about it being like 38 degrees Celsius, which is still pretty hot, which is like 100 degrees. But I'm like, man, it's like 44 Celsius here in America, and at least in Rancho Cucamonga, it's like 111, 112 some days, and it's stinking hot. But Harstem is practicing hard. We'll see if he's able to take out his opponent in the bottom left, Andre.
Yeah, it is Darkforce. Darkforce, known as the macro player. Now, he made his name actually in Zerg versus Terran, which I believe isn't really his strongest matchup right now. His Zerg versus Protoss is surprisingly good. Whoa, what are you doing, Darkforce? Woo! Just
want to chase after the pro.
That is obviously a misclick. Yeah. Unfortunate. But Darkforce, definitely known for his macro-style Zerg, and I'm looking forward to see how he's doing now. He's been competing in the North American Star League, although he hasn't. He needs to requalify, I do believe. Darkforce just has not been doing as well, but we'll see how he does over here in the NASL Gauntlet.
Yes, and Darkforce is actually still a good player. You know, you're allowed to make early mistakes. I don't know how much minerals you actually lose from pulling all your drones for like 3 seconds, Andre, but I've always made that misclick. In fact, whenever I'm trying to do the new mineral boosting trick, I sometimes mistakenly grab like 3 probes and like send it to the other side, and they're like kind of idling, and it's always just happens. It's nothing too huge. You can see that Darkforce is still going to get up his expansion at a reasonable time, around just before the 3-minute mark. But at the same time, you can see that Harstem has been just walling off at pretty naturally. Now, Harstem's been experimenting with a lot of his play. Again, when I was watching his practice games against Suppy, he's been going for light gateway pressure, but utilizing a lot of War Prisms mid-game for storm drops, for immortal drops, actually. So lots of cool things out of this guy's department, so you can't actually say what he's going to do, but he does seem to really enjoy all kinds of play, especially robo-centric styles.
Yeah, Robo is definitely in fad. The kind of weirder style, I would say, is not going Robotech at all, really just relying on High Templars, which is so weird, but that's definitely become more of a fashion statement, I would say. Hero definitely popularized that, and he seems to be the only person that can continuously do that particular style. But here we have the most standard style of Zerg versus Protoss. Of course, Harstem probably not going to be seeing that High Templar style whatsoever. But Darkforce just getting in there, keeping his Overlord over here, checking on gas timings. Of course, putting his Overlord all the way over here. It's eventually going to get there so that he can go in at around the 7-minute mark and scout exactly what his opponent is doing.
Yeah, you want to just get a general sense of what Protoss is doing with their tech initially on, especially gas timings. If they take any at their natural, it's going to be very, very important to understand. You can see Darkforce already moving that Overlord closer to his opponent just to monitor those things. Now, Daybreak is an interesting map because a lot of people still try to force timings on that Zerg third, but because Zergs are doing these small things like spreading creep, for example, which is Darkforce is doing by his third base, it's becoming increasingly difficult to actually land those timings. And you can see that Darkforce already has a Zergling on patrol just to scout for any proxy pylons.
Definitely one of the most powerful things. A lot of people actually overvalue, I should be careful with this, but they overvalue the power of the inject. Injects are awesome because you 4 more larvae, of course, but it's at the opportunity cost, of course, of a creep tumor. Creep tumors are so valuable, and they make roaches, they make queens, they make zerglings so much more effective in the early game stages when they don't have the ability to get their speeds up. Metabolic boost, glial reconstitution, and of course the queens just being slow as crap to begin with. That being said, queens are going to be very necessary against this opening. It is Stargate play coming out from Harstem.
Yes, Stargate play, of course, pretty prevalent nowadays. A lot of people have just been going back to it. And I actually remembered, Andre, that At this point, Harstem, I guess he doesn't necessarily favor actually, yeah, I was about to say he doesn't favor too many Void Rays in the matchup, but just getting one Stargate Phoenix just to control a map is pretty good. And if you just get like 3 or 4 and then you actually switch tech from that point on, it's still pretty good in terms of how much utility you get out of those Phoenixes constantly, in terms of scouting, in terms of, you know, if they allow you to pick off an Overlord or a drone or two, especially if you get to see other important things like where their tech is, especially for late game if you want to do some more prison play.
For now, Darkforce is just droning up. You can see 48. Actually, he's pretty oversaturated at his third base. About 6 drones that are mining half the efficiency of the regular drones, the other 16. But everything is going according to plan, I think, for both of these players. We will have a save up of Phoenixes, 3 or 4, as you were talking about. 4 is the optimal, I think, just because you can always pick up Queen and kill it straight up with a Graviton Beam. Overlord is finally going to get in here. It's a little bit late, so he will be kind of late to the party in defending against this. Oh, look at this. Sentries and Stalkers nicely in place. But this should be a little bit of a tell. It's like, why is this Robo so late? Yeah. He does see the Robo, but finally the Phoenixes will show themselves. Yeah,
normally if you're going to go for a Robo initially, you're just going to get it really quickly off your first 100 gas, or maybe after the plus 1 weapon has been started. But Harstem is just going to use these Phoenixes to do exactly what we said, pick off whatever he can, and immediately starting to see if he can snipe that Queen at the third, slow the production of Darkforce. Although Darkforce, I mean, he's just making other Queens. He's making Zerglings. Sometimes the response of Zerglings is just to make more drones and place a bunch of Spores down. And you can see Darkforce making 5, 6 Spore Callers at the moment, so really trying to overreact slightly just to make sure the Phoenixes can't do more damage than they're allowed to.
Absolutely. The Phoenixes are very powerful, actually, in this stage of the game. You can see all straggling Overlords are going to be taken out until Spores or Queens are going to come out here. Spores will come out to defend a little bit, but still Darkforce has to be very careful. This one Queen is super far out of position. Might go down. No. Yes, it will.
That's actually a really good rearrangement. Harstem realizing that one Phoenix was under attack. Now, Harstem has been powering up it already. Again, we were talking about switching techs, going straight for Colossus, or at least Robotics Bay at the moment, while pushing out a couple of Immortals. And in the end, after you do enough damage, you do have a window for timing where Zerg tries to, you know, re-drone up, trying to re-establish their economy, and you stall their production a lot, and their supply count isn't as healthy as it would be. And that's probably what Harstem can do, but at the same time, you also are allowed to try to get the Colossus out to be safe against any counterattack and then expand to a third. And that's what a lot of Protoss players have been doing as well. Now,
Darkforce should have some indication that this will be a very heavy 2-base pressure. We're already 10.5 minutes in. Any expansions by the Protoss, I think, would be very, very silly. Just because it's so much later. You're actually, wow, he's going to put down this Nexus. Now, what this basically says is, I'm going to be passive for a long time. I think this would actually be an indicator once this Nexus might be halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way done, to actually drop a 4th base. And the main reason for that is you have such a gigantic economic advantage over your opponent. You're mining 6 gas over 4 gas for just so much longer that you will be able to just pull ahead in economy. I feel like this is slightly out of place. The Phoenix pressure in the beginning doesn't do nearly as much damage as it needs to justify a 10.5-minute 3rd base expansion.
Speaking of really quick things in general, Darkforce is getting a Hive at 11 minutes in this game. He did plant down his Infestation bit. Now, I thought originally he planted a Spire, but I can't find that, so it means that
it's at the 3rd.
Oh, it's at the 3rd. Okay. I wasn't sure if he canceled that Spire, but, you know, getting a Hive this quickly when you see that your opponent's going for a 3rd, a great response, because you know that your opponent's going to be really passive, at least until he gets upgrades, until he gets a large amount of force. And as a result, the early damage I feel that Darkforce took was somewhat negligible, as he's pumping out 20 drones at the moment. And now it goes up to a good healthy count of 84.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, I think a cool little tactic that you could have done if you're Harstem is actually cancel this Nexus and then go for the 2-base all-in. I think that would have been really, really good. Obviously, if you do that, I mean, normally Zergs are going to react by going to Hive Tech, taking their 4th base, all of which do not constitute to a strong army. Let's say Infestors would be the weapon of choice to actually defend against a lot of these different all-ins. So that would have been a little bit cool, but of course, as we said, Harstem is going for the macro play from here, but as we were talking about, Darkforce will have just this advantage in development of his Hive Tech units. And this is going to be really, really tough, I think, for Harstem to actually stop Harstem needs to actually push before Hive. You can see 142. But he hasn't materialized anything from this expansion. You need to actually keep this up for about 45 seconds and keep it mining if you want to just make back the money that you invested into it.
Ooh, I like this from Harstem. I understand what you're saying, though. I mean, Harstem hasn't really been able to capitalize the benefits.
Yeah, so why even do this push if you're not going to do that? The production isn't at that level either.
He scouted with his Phoenixes the Hive timing, and he knows that Zerg can't have it for that long, so he needs to push now, which is coincidentally a really good time because the Greater Spire is only about halfway done, although Harstem is giving Zerg a lot of time to prepare, but that's because he's trying to fight for a strong position, utilizing the small, narrow choke path, and also because Harstem knows he doesn't have Blink yet. And trying to engage without Blink when Zerg potentially has Infestors, very, very dangerous game to play. Now, Harstem has to do this very carefully because he gets caught up with Fungals and the Corruptors deal with the Colossus. He's going to be in a lot of trouble, but we do see that immediately a big surround from Darkforce. The Force Fields keep the Infestors at bay, but enough range for them to at least land a couple Fungals. A Blink forward, and Harstem is trying to be extremely aggressive. The Fungals are not even done at the 4th base. It's a great timing for Harstem. He just has to make sure to micro and capitalize on the Zerg weakness.
Another round of units is on the way right now. 15 Roaches, and look at that. Broodlords are starting to morph. Now, actually, Darkforce can give up this base. Don't think he has to actually keep it. He can give it up and just rely on 3-base economy, knowing that he has the better army with those Broodlords. But he has to be very careful. Losing a lot of Infestors is not going to help out at all.
But he does manage to burrow and save 2 of them just in the nick of time. But this is, again, a great timing from Harstem. Great scouting with the Phoenixes. And now Harstem does manage to kill the 4th base. Does he press into the 3rd? Has to be, again, very cautious about what his opponent's doing. He doesn't necessarily have the Phoenixes or Observers to spot the Broodlords at all, but now the Broodlords have been revealed, and the Fungals do keep the stocks in place. Has to make sure to protect these Broodlords so they don't get blinked underneath, but you can see that the Roaches are completely melting under the prowess of the 3 Colossus, and this 3rd base is under jeopardy as well. A massive blink forward. No more Fungals to keep them down, and Harstem may have a little bit too much for Darkforce to protect this 3rd base.
That's exactly right. I can't believe this. Harstem is going to take advantage of this Hive Tech timing. And look at that. In the blink of an eye, 2 bases go down. Now, Broodlords are very powerful, but only 5. You can't really go over this area. I mean, Blinkstalkers are actually pretty strong in this position. And with 2-1 over 0-0 in the air, I mean, you can't really do that much. Darkforce needs to just back up to 2 base. And with that, Harstem will be able to take the advantage. You can see that Darkforce is trying to take his base, but it's going to be very hard to actually hold that.
Harstem also sniped the Greater Spire, which was placed at the 3rd, Andre, so that is going to set back Darkforce very far, just because, again, he doesn't really have that Greater Spire to make Broodlords or even get upgrades for what he needs to protect his heir as much. You can see that Harstem's already starting to work on his 4th expansion, while Darkforce is just having trouble reestablishing another hatchery. And the Broodlords are out, but at the same time, they can't go too far because the Stalkers would just blink forward and snipe them.
Darkforce has to be very careful with that. I mean, if he loses 1 Broodlord, it's so detrimental to his army. He needs to remake the Spire. He needs to remake the Greater Spire. It takes so much time that really it's not that manageable at this position. And Harstem is going to do it correct, just constantly denying this 3rd base. Doesn't want to give his opponent any amount of time to actually remake his army composition.
Ooh, a couple Infestors that had almost full energy get sniped as well. And Darkforce, even though he's doing a good job transfusing his Broodlords and really trying to micro well, there's just so much reload in Harstem's ability to reproduce because his economy is thriving compared to Darkforce's. Kind of starting to starve. He doesn't really have anything else. I mean, GG gets called out. Harstem takes game number 1 in the NASL EU Gauntlet number 3.
You know, that big battle, there was actually the whole time where the Corruptors were just going against the Phoenixes. You actually said it in our last cast. Phoenixes do absolutely no damage against Corruptors. Corruptors have a base of 2 armor. So when Phoenixes are doing 2 shots of 5, they're actually only doing a total of 6 damage against Corruptors who have I guess for Phoenix is a bajillion hit points. He should actually been targeting down the Colossus. You can see the retention of those Colossus actually gave him the ability to stop those Broodlords quite easily. And not only that, you can protect when you kill the Colossus, you protect your Infestors a lot more. Obviously, they can search forward a little bit more. I think Zerglings are a lot more powerful in that situation. A slew of things, but the fact of the matter is those Corruptors need to be able to take out those Colossus in order for him to defend that. He wasn't able to do that, and you saw Darkforce just lose both of his bases right away.
So really good job by Harstem. You know, Harstem just played actually really solid PvZ. He showed us a crazy game last time we were here.
Yeah.
And now he shows us a really stable game, so really good dimension to his play. We'll find out if he's able to be dethroned. There's 2 games. Harstem's eligible for the fan voting, so if you're a big fan of Harstem, go ahead and start pushing him for the fan favorite Gauntlet in the Final 4 fan favorite. We'll be back after a quick commercial break. We'll see who's up against Harstem and see if we can take the Gauntlet away from him. But otherwise, he'll stay on top. We'll find out in just a minute.